Hi, this is Mehdi,
Hey, this is Fran.
and this is Total Tactics Football. So, Fran, what are we discussing today?
So today I think we want to discuss how Chelsea's midfield struggled versus Palace. Lampard started with Gilmour, who had his second EPL start. He played
Yeah.
alongside Ross Barkley and Mason Mount. I think it was very effective early on in the game where you saw Chelsea score many lightning quick counterattacks with Pulisic and Willian in their interplay alongside Mount. But the midfield control slightly slipped away from them.
You're right. You're definitely right. I think the fact that in that midfield three they only played with one player who's a bit used to controlling the game, someone who's a midfielder by trade who likes to hold the ball, while the others two are more of a ball carriers and more like to be in the final third. And I think it works very good when the attack is working, and you're on you're on the front foot and you're leaving and like, you're charging towards the defense. But it's about when you lose the ball, that's what happens then. At that point, you only have one player, and in this case would be Billy Gilmour, in transition to defend. And I think we're gonna talk about this today. I feel like this is something we wanted to discuss. So, what do you think, Fran?
Definitely. So I think when you look at the the midfielders individually, you have Ross Barkley, who is traditionally seen as a box-to-box, but he is mostly an offensive player. He always
Yep.
looks for offensive runs to try and score in behind, and he tries to frame his game based on Lampard, who at times played in an attacking midfield position to score most of his goals. And then you have Mason Mount, who is crucial to the Chelsea counterattacks. He always leads the line and is able to switch flanks and play alongside both the wingers and create interplays with them that, even were pivotal for the third and final Chelsea goal.
Oh no, for sure. I feel like Mason Mount would be characterized more than box to box as a number 10 or a left attacking midfielder, someone, or you could even play him on the left wing. I feel like it's quite brave of Lampard trying to play him in a midfield three in a more of a deeper role. But as we know, he connects the defense with midfield with attack. He's going to be out of his position to do that. It requires him to his game requires him to move out of position. His game requires him to be forward, and that can be problematic when you have a team that's like Crystal Palace, who are not going to hold most of the possession. They're going to be looking to attack on you on the break. You can't afford to have only one player and a player who's 18 years old to be there to stop those transitional attacks.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So, for example, when you look at the first goal and you look at the first frame we have here, Billy Gilmour is in a good attacking position, laid off the pass to Reece James, and Willian and Reece James are about to start an attack on the right wing. Gilmour drops back into a central midfield position, and unfortunately, Reece James loses the ball. At this point, Gilmour has to make a very fast decision, see what he has to do to kind of shut down the attack. He opts to go for Van Arnholt, which is a logical decision because he sees that Van Arnholt has a lot of space to run down the left flank. But in
Yeah.
retrospect, there's a lot of space for Kouyaté and Zaha to drift into the midfield. This is a position where he's meant to be covering. And because of the Chelsea defensive lapse and the overcommitment of Mason Mount and Ross Barkley, there's an entire field of space for Zaha to score his wonder goal.
No, for sure. And I feel like for an 18-year-old, he saw Van Aanholt on his left foot running down the flank, and he felt like that's because the right back's not there to cover. He's made the mistake of forward. Willian's not in position, and he goes out of the position to stop that play and gets a deflection, but there's no one to protect him. Barkley is passively walking back. It is just not enough. And like you mentioned, there are three people with Benteke. Why isn't one of the defenders pressing forward onto Zaha so that they could apply some pressure on his shot? And Zaha has allowed time, and we know Zaha has the quality. Zaha takes a wonderful shot. I do think Kepa could do better. But like you mentioned, why wasn't the defense allowed to? And I do think these are problems that um, Lampard really needs to address. He gets lucky. He's getting lucky this season sometimes, but like once you start like becoming a big team, you're gonna be playing important matches. This is how you're gonna lose. And if you want to be title contenders, if you want to be winning trophies, he needs to work on this stuff.
That's the perfect point you raised there. It's not just on Gilmour. Gilmour's a young player. He has time to develop, and he has the skills to play in that position in the future, but he needs more experience and he needs support. And you're not going to get that support from Ross Barkley and Mason Mount, who are always bombarding forward. So we saw later on the game, we saw a sub for Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Ruben Loftus-Cheek is quite similar to Ross Barkley in that frame. It's almost a like for like sub, but Loftus-Cheek obviously adds a lot more physical presence. Unfortunately, you can see the same kind of trends popping up at Chelsea, where they're not able to track Van Aanholt's run on the second Crystal Palace goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know there's something missing there. Why wasn't Jorginho on the field? And I mean, isn't he? We would consider him to be probably the best central midfielder Chelsea has right now. He holds the ball, he holds position. His possessional, like you said, in the second goal as well, Van Aanholt was allowed to run freely through that midfield into that attack. And I mean, we're going to now move on from there to Jorginho, who was on the bench and didn't start. And I feel like, I don't know what the reason why, but big games like this, when your top four race is so heated up, you can't afford to play. You got away today. They got away today because Crystal Palace hit the post in the last minute, but you don't get lucky always.
Absolutely. I mean, even Crystal Palace's first goal really came out of misfortune. That goal should have not stood, in a sense where if Cahill isn't injured, he's able to track the run of Willian. And when you
Exactly.
think about it, and chances, Crystal Palace had just as many good chances as Chelsea did today. And that's not a good look for a Crystal Palace side who have lost 4-0 to Liverpool and 3-0 to Leicester recently.
No, you're definitely right, and I think this is a really serious issue. They're bolstering up in attack for next season. They're bringing in Ziyech, they're bringing in, but I feel like the central midfield position we discussed before. I personally think that obviously attack is very important, and that's something to build on. But maybe more structurally, he needs to decide what allows them to attack so freely. If you're not going to be adding new people into that midfield role, you need to then provide a structure where people aren't exposed.
Definitely. I think in the second half, Chelsea were getting overrun. It was reminiscent of the first half for Crystal Palace, where after they conceded 2 goals and Zaha scored his first, the possession actually dropped back into Crystal Palace's favor, which is surprising for a team that plays largely from a low block and through counterattacks. That shows that the Chelsea midfield, as Lampard is constructed, doesn't have enough control. And when Jorginho came on the field, the possession for Chelsea started to drop 80-20 in their favor. And
That's
although
incredible.
obviously Palace had subsequent counterattacks, think about the amount of more counterattacks Crystal Palace could have had in the late stages of the game if Jorginho wasn't on the field.
Yeah, definitely, and you could see that in the game against Arteta's Arsenal. At the Emirates, more Jorginho didn't start the game. Arsenal was in control. Arsenal was winning 1-0. He brings Jorginho on. Jorginho runs the whole game. Arsenal lose all control whatsoever. Chelsea wins 2-1. And that seems to be like a sort of a trend now that Jorginho comes in, Jorginho controls the game, and then Chelsea win. And I feel like it's a weird thing that Jorginho isn't starting. I think Jorginho needs to be starting. I know there was an injury problem before, but I think he's had enough significant time to recover. So that is a question to ask. Why isn't he playing? And he is their best midfielder in that role. If you're going to play a 4-3-3, you need the person to sit in that deep role. Jorginho is your passing wise the best player. Defensively, his positional play more than anything else. And what do you think? What's going on there, or what does Lampard need to do?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on in terms of negotiations. It seems like they're trying to force him out of the club, really. And I think they do need him. He has a role to play, even though Kante and Kovacic are out for injury. He is the only person in the Chelsea midfield who's able to drop crossfield passes to the wingers. And you can
Yeah,
see that in the Crystal Palace game. That's an element of his game that unfortunately Billy Gilmour doesn't have. He has the time to, adapt and expand his wide aware of assets already. But that's what Jorginho at present provides Chelsea, and I think he's needed at the club.
well, I definitely think so, and I think it's more that Jorginho knows how to be in a position so when he receives the ball, he's not under pressure. I think that's the most smartest thing. It's similar to Rodri, similar to Busquets. They know positionally where to be when to receive a ball, so that they're not under pressure. They're constantly moving, but they're not moving too out of position. And like you said, his passing range is incredible, and that really opens up. So if you have attacking players who are wide and it provide you different options, Jorginho can pick them out. And Lampard needs to use his options more often.
Definitely. So as Chelsea have several games to go and are continuing to fight for a top four spot, we'll see what happens. We'll hopefully Jorginho plays so that Chelsea can secure that.
That he is their best bet. He is their best bet. And they've got the FA Cup game coming up. They need him against Manchester United, because Manchester United will use that space in between. And with the fast pace of the front line and Pogba and Bruno, uh, Chelsea's going to struggle if they don't play Jorginho.